Hello everyone, welcome to another day of this wonderful project pack, this summery fun celebration of tangles of a botanical nature.
It's a great pack.
It's a good one.
It's really
It's
fun.
good. We were having a lot of fun here.
Yeah.
My name is Molly Hollaba, and I'm here with my mom.
Hi, I'm Maria, and I'll always jump in with anybody.
I know you will. Yes,
and,
you have lots of good comments. So
yeah.
I'm really glad you're here with me because we were down to a little bit of a skeleton crew here with this.
Summer does that, right?
Yeah, and so I was excited to have somebody to support me here. And I love Project Pack so much. And every time we come up with a new idea, I can't imagine that it'll be better than one of the other ones. And not that they're better, but I get just as excited every time. It's like having little babies. We have these great materials here. Wonderful materials. I'm excited about these new little bags here. And as usual, if you don't have the materials that came in your Project Pack 21, use whatever you have at home. If you do want a project pack and you don't have it yet, they're available at Zentangle.com or from some of our certified Zentangle teachers. And if you are just getting started with this project pack, then I encourage you to go back and check out our introductory video, and it'll explain more about these organic tangles and these tangles of botanical nature. So I invite you all to get your materials ready, and what we like to do when we start our practice is just give ourselves a moment to pause, a moment to maybe focus on your breath, a moment to maybe close your eyes for a second, but really a moment to honor something in your world that you're grateful for. And we encourage you to tap into that thing or things or feelings that fill your cup, those things that energize you and support you and heal you, the things that make you smile, the things that we're grateful for.
Yes.
I am very grateful, Mom, that you're here with me today.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I have to say, you really showed me a lot of things. And so I feel like a lot of the stuff I'm doing today is actually stuff you've showed me how to do. So
Well, that's kind of cool, right?
this
That's
particular botanical illustration that we're doing was actually one that you came up with, and I am going to be teaching it today because you're nursing a little bit of an injury, but I am happy to share it with you all. And it was one of my favorites she showed me, and I was like, I'm doing it. So this, I think, flower that we're going to celebrate today is called a singing mirth blossom. A singing mirth blossom. And this particular species is one that's so striking that when you see it on a walk, you will stop and just be in awe because it's so beautiful. But also, one of the special things about this particular plant is that it does actually make noise.
Oh, that's the coolest thing.
I know, yeah.
I don't know if I know any flowers.
I
that
don't,
sing.
yeah. And so this is a really special species to find. And if you just be very, very, very quiet, you will hear the songs of the singing mirth blossom. Shall we begin?
Absolutely.
All right. So if you are not familiar with the tangle mirth, it's going to come about in a variation in this, but we're going to start off with some other bits here. So here's how we're going to start. I'm going to begin up in this sort of upper third of the oval here, and I'm starting with my black micron 01, and I'm going to begin by creating a little bit of a sort of a cradle or a C shape. And I think we actually did this with another one in this series too. So it's kind of this almost little space to begin. So I'm going to create a little sort of C shape, and it can be
That's the size of your thumb, right? The tip of your thumb.
Yeah, that's a good, I can't do that. I can't put my thumb down right. So yeah, that's good to see, or like next to the pen, you can see the space. And with any of these tangles, it doesn't have to be exactly the same size as mine. Yes, thank you very much.
I knew it was my thumb size. I wasn't sure about yours.
Yes, it's exactly not. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating a tangle we called fescue, which is an old tangle. That's from like an original tangle, and it's playful and fun, and it's a nice way to kind of begin this. So I'm going to draw these fescues, and then at the end of my fescue, it's a little bit of a variation. So
right.
A fescue kind of wiggles up and then has a little ball on the end.
Right.
Like so. And you can leave your fescue kind of as a singular one, or you can kind of put a little shadow on it. And then we're going to continue to shoot these fescue out.
Willy-nilly. They just could go in their own different directions, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an exact aura. I'm just kind of adding a little bit of, what would you say that is? Like sort of girth, interest, yeah. And then they'll kind of go behind one another. So it's a very thin aura just to kind of insinuate that there's more to it than just that basic.
Fescue was one of the first tangles that we had created, and it was so simple. It was just the single line and that little bulb at the end that would wiggle in different ways according to the wind or whatever. And it has morphed over the years into half of this one or part of that one, or but this is right now is what it looked like in the beginning, just pretty much just the line and the little orb there.
I love fescue.
I know, it's really a great one. And we forget about these tried and true ones. And this is so simple. And I remember new students commenting that they really loved this because it showed a letting go of something that they needed to have control over in the past. But this taught them to let go and express themselves in a very simple way.
Actually, I like it a little bit more every time I do it. So I'm continuing to add some of these. Maybe some of them kind of even go over a little bit. And this little kind of wiggly aura just, to me, adds some flair to it. And I'm sort of purposely, obviously, putting a little, it's like a shakiness to my fescues, and I think that adds a little personality. So as an added feature, this looks very fun like it is, and you might choose to leave it as is. I'm going to add a little bit of a tangulation here where I'm going to add a Indirella topper. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, it could be considered that. So she's going to give it a little, okay, I was wondering what you were going to do.
Oh, so I am going to, Indirella goes like this, where it's sort of these little...
That's right.
And we can zoom that in a little bit to see.
And I actually like it that you're doing it at this point as opposed to as you were going along. You can judge better here how you want these to...
Right, they can kind of fall in different places. Because I did think about that when I was doing it. Should I do it as I go? And you could probably try it either way.
Well, I think this makes more sense Zentangle-wise, because now you're doing these strokes over and over.
Right.
But if you do too many strokes before you repeat them, sometimes it's hard.
You lose your
way.
And then, once you get these on here, you can always add more. If you're like, oh, I should put one in here, you can look at your composition and sort of see where things are. And I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to leave that as is. And then I think that I'll pretend like that one came over here. I'm going to ink in these sides here just to create
a hole.
A little hole, yeah. And then when I shade later, the rest of it will kind of, might even come like that, so that it does have that feeling of it being jumping out. There we go. And then the shading will come later. So actually, that's pretty cool. Just like that, yeah. I'm all about process, so I'm always like, that's pretty cool. Fun thing to do when you're tangling is take pictures as you go, because you might, things change a lot, and you might go back and be like, oh yeah, that's what it looked like before or after I did a particular thing. So the next thing to do is I'm going to work up to my mirth that I'm adding. But before I do that, I want to make a little bit of a collar here. I want to play around with this arc here. So I'm just going to take a really simple sort of zigzaggy line here. A little bit like a collar, right, Mom?
Mm-hmm.
Little details like auras, and this is just a variation of that, which can add to the layers of your work. And then I'm going to kind of put some little inky details in here to kind of play around with the contrast. Every little step here is just to add details to your process. So if you're like, oh, I liked everything you did until then, you can always skip any of these bits. So it's your work from start to finish, and you're the student and you get to choose, because you're also the artist and the designer and all that stuff. So we try to kind of show you all lots of little details. Okay, so now we have another layer to our blossom here. The next layer is going to be the part we were talking about, which is 2 tangles that we introduced about a year ago, which was, one of them is basically a tangle that was also a reticula that we called Pangea.
Right.
And it's this big sort of like amoeba kind of shape. The tangle, we had a certain particular filler called Mirth that was basically a filler of this Pangea tangle. So feel free to look up Pangea and Mirth if you're curious about this tangle. But and I actually can show you on another piece of paper just for a second here. I like to do that. So the shape of Pangea is these kind of like
blobs.
It's like you threw some like slime up in the air and it fell down, and then we would be working with multiple ones to put them together. We're just working with one today as well, so we're going to use that kind of idea for our blossom here, and it's going to build off here. So you can just watch me for a minute kind of use this like more orby looking thing. As we fill it, it will take on this more sort of presence, I think.
Right.
The filler for this mirth is actually, all these tangles layered together, is sort of like a derivative of senna, right? It's sort of like taking senna and filling it into this particular more blob. So I'm going to start showing you how we're going to use senna on this, and then you can watch for a little bit and decide how it makes sense, because your, I'm sure, blobbiness looks a little different than mine. So my first stroke I'm going to do is going to be kind of this like a little bit of a little, would you say, wave to it, like this. And
you want movement in here.
Movement in senna, yeah. And you aura and add weighting until you decide you need to make a little bit of a change, and then you aura and add weighting. And so what we're going to do is do this beautiful stroke, and then at the bottom I'm going to add a little suction cup sort of weighting to the end. And then right next to it, I'm going to do another stroke here, add a little weighting. And this is the time where you might just watch for a little while and
then watch again with new eyes.
Yeah, and then start on yours, because you'll see how it evolves in a way that might be a little different than if you were just watching and drawing every stroke.
If you are right-handed, you will be doing it like Molly's doing it, to the right of the previous line. If you're left-handed, it makes more sense to go in the other direction, just so that you can see the lines really well that you're auraing.
So now I'm going to actually start drawing some lines going in a different direction. And that's how Senna becomes a little curious, because it's like you can decide to kind of change the direction to get a little bit of a different, I think, texture.
I think that Senna is a sculpting tool.
Yes, that's
right?
What it is.
It
totally
sculpts a flat area into these constantly evolving and moving, undulating collections of lines.
So I just went off course on that one to sort of allow myself to fill this area, and it sort of gives you an illusion of the lines going in different directions.
So now you can see that the petals are going behind each other here.
Right.
How cool is that?
So like I said, this is one that you might play around with a little bit. We say that Zentangle is a practice because it is really that. It's this process of sort of almost journaling our creative expression over and over again and enjoying every step along the way. So don't feel like you need to have this amazing result every time, but learn from your strokes and acknowledge that, it's all part of the process, and don't compare yourself to others. Just work within your own zone. You have a very particular look. We all do. So if your Senna doesn't look like mine, then you've succeeded. All right, so I've obviously gotten almost all of them on here. I'm going to just finish up these last couple here. Like I said, you'll get the hang of it slowly and surely, kind of, and you'll have something cool, I'm sure. All right, so there's my my mirth part of it, which is like very, very fun, yeah. And I've done a few of these similarly, and each one looks very different, which I like as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what all of you come up with. All right, so you can see I have this very exotic blossom going on here, and I'm going to put a very robust sort of stem
Well, it
here.
takes you have to have a heavy.
Yes, you do. I think so.
For all that fescue.
Yes, and but I think just for starters, because we've been doing this little tucker bit, I'm going to put a place for my tucker, because I don't know, I just love this detail, actually. It's very fun. So just putting that in to get started. And then I'm going to begin with just one thin little stem here that kind of goes all the way down and then through, and then aura that. This is just going to be like our base here. We'll build off of that. And then I'm going to create a series of these sort of muka or fescue-esque sort of branches that come off of this, and they kind of come around and sort of fescue off. And then I'm going to aura it a little bit different, sort of from the ball. I'm going to create a thin little aura. Comes all the way down here. And then this is the little trick we were doing. And this is actually, I could probably even like bring a little bit of acanthus maybe in there, how we do acanthus a little bit. So I'm going to create sort of and this is like purposely using your shaky line and kind of
like Samson, right?
Little Samson, sort of like this leafy, so the shakier the line, the better, I would say. I'm going to create another one that kind of comes, and these can come in different places. They don't have to all have a rhyme or reason, and this one's going to curl this way. And then you do your kind of thin aura to begin with. Again, each little aura creates more depth in your work. And then your sort of gradual fern-like shape. So you could be like, oh, I'll do it without the aura. And you easily could. It's just another layer that creates some more depth to what you're doing. So yeah, I kind of have them going in different directions. Almost like it's all, what's the word? Unfurling, is that the word? Unfurling? Mm. So one thing I like to do with these types of leaves when I'm doing acanthus or Samson is I go back in and add just a little bit of rounding to some of these little gullies here. And to me, that adds a lot.
Adds a lot.
Yeah, you'd be, you kind of can pick which ones you want to do and add to any of them. You can always go back and add more too. All right, so that already changes it so much. But there's another detail I'm adding, and this is so simple, but it like changes a lot. And I'm going to go into where the leaves are. Now look carefully because it's easy to like get lost on where you are. But I'm just going to go into each leaf and I'm going to add just dots, gentle dots with my pen. Speckled dots, yeah. And I'm going a little bit over where that black line was to make it look like it's not there. And then where's this leaf here? And the dots actually then make the leaf appear a little bit too.
Right.
It's also a way to create like a color, right?
A mid-tone.
Yeah. This is a great idea to add to any of your tangled works, so to feel free to, if you're like, oh, that space just needs a little something. I like these little things, like I know you always say when in doubt aura, but sometimes you're not sure where to go next, but sometimes you can do something like this in the meantime while your mind is trying to figure stuff out. All right, so as you can see, I'm just adding more bits of rounding here, and with the tucker, I like to go in and sort of add these little dark bits on the side. So all of this, you know, adding love bit does really create a difference.
Subtle is the word.
Yeah. All right, so I have all of my beautiful singing mirth blossom here hanging out. I am going to add a little seed here at the bottom. So I'm going to take off from the bottom here and create a very like open sort of spiral. And sort of round it off just like we did. And then just kind of create that little zigzaggy shape. It's smaller, so you don't need as much. And I'm going to put a little bit of those speckles on there. It's like an apostrophe a little bit. How's that lettering, Mom?
Perfect.
All right. There we go. All right, I think we're ready for some shading. Feel free to get crazy and wild with your own colors. You don't have to do the same color as me. But I think that this center should be sort of an exotic color. And so I'm going to use my blue to kind of play around.
So you're talking about the center or the center? Center.
The center
of
the...
First I thought you said the center. No, that's not going to be blue.
Right. But you can use any color you want. So I'm putting in the color pretty dark here at the bottom. And I'm just putting it in dark at the bottom here. And I'm just going to very gracefully stay away from that collar because I want to leave that white. I think that'll be, but you might have another story for that. And then just kind of gradually, very gradually fading it out. And I might add a little graphite at the bottom over it.
It'll be the darkest detail on the composition, so it has some
mysteriousness to it. So I think what I'm going to do for my my mirth blossom is I'm going to use the red and the yellow, but again, you can explore something a little different for yours. But I'm going to play around with, I like to start with my pencils really sharp, by the way, because then I can get in these little bits.
So Molly's leaving the white little ruffle there that's there, and it's such a beautiful little detail. I don't want anybody to accidentally run over it.
So I put a pretty strong red bit there, and then I'm going to put dark red at the tips of my blossoms too. First thing I'm going to do is take my tortillon and kind of soften out the red. And then in the middle here, I'm going to add my yellow, sort of as that middle, which is fun. And then again with the tortillon, kind of, what's great about these pencils is they really like each other, so they blend well. I'm going to go play around with some of these places where it seems to overlap a little bit. And you can, put your tile or your piece of paper at arm's length and check out where you're at, see what you want to do. And you can always go back in and do what we did with the
leaves.
When the leaves, add that little kind of after you do your shading. I think with my leaves, I'm going to, again, use your own colors, play around with what you want. I'm going to combine the green and the blue. I'm going to start at the bottom. And it moves around well, so you don't have to fill every space. When you get with the tortillon, it'll do that for you. And then before I move that around, I'm going to put a little blue comes off this top part. I think I'll just add just a little bit to the again, these pastel pencils are great. You don't have to fill in every bit. And kind of, and I left some of this bit white to kind of get some natural highlights going. Mm-hmm. And then just, I think, a little bit here and there for some shades. And then, of course, our tucker detail. So once you get the hang of this, you'll probably use it.
It takes so little graphite to do this detail.
Right?
Watch this detail now.
Get rid of this other tortillon. Yeah, all your tortillons, I'm sure, will end up beautiful colors. Oh, that's amazing. And the seed, I believe the seed is much more blue. But maybe a little bit of green. Okay, so we have our seed illustration on there. Mm-hmm. So at this point, one of my favorite things we've been doing on these tangles of botanical nature with these templates is this background. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really pulling together these compositions. So spending a little time to sort of anchor our pieces and anchor the pages gives it, I think, like a purpose.
Right.
Purposeful.
I like adding the color there because it makes it almost like a brooch or something very valuable that's sitting in the middle there. That it's not the same as the surrounding things with the lettering and stuff. It's kind of brings it into its own. It's like the added importance.
Yeah, I like that added importance. So one of the techniques we've been using is not necessarily coloring in the entire space, but rather just starting from the edges, adding some of these pastel chalks, and then working with what the material is capable of, right? So you kind of learn about your tools, you learn about the materials, and in this case, these General's pastel chalk pencils are a art material that is kind of designed to move around the surface of the paper and blend with other colors and all that. So it's a lot of it's about learning about an art supply, and then not forcing in to do something it doesn't want to do, and then I guess like learning its potential and playing around with what it can do. I think that I'm also going to add a little of the yellow in these other spaces. It's kind of a...
The triangles?
Yeah.
You can read or you don't have to.
Yeah, it depends. You could add more tangles there. Yeah. You can, it's all part of your composition, whatever you're...
You could even do like a little example of each of the tangles that were involved in the project.
Yeah, Martha did that on one of hers. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Sort of the blending of all the... Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's so many different ways for you to kind of create your series, and you might have a way that you kind of follow along with all of them, or you might be the type of person that wants to taste all the different ideas and do each one a little bit different, and that's fine too. There's not really like one way to do this, as we often offer you in Zentangle. People sometimes come to us and they'll be like, can you tell me exactly how to do this? And we'll be like, well, we could show you one way to do it. But there is no exact way. And oftentimes what's so exciting is we come up with a way to do something and we teach it that way. And then one of our students comes up with a totally different way to do it. And we're like, no way.
Whenever that happens, it's so exciting.
So I'm going to find my my tortillon that currently looks the most yellow.
We're so technical in this family.
Well, I realize that I've been sharing these tortillons with Rick, so...
okay. Enough said.
So once you have all that yellow in, we've also been playing with this idea of going over the color with the graphite to add sort of a antiquing effect. Mm-hmm. And
also give it some look like it was not a flat surface, right?
Right. Yeah, so what I've been doing is kind of like not going all the way around with the graphite, but sort of choosing little bits so you have...
So graphite's really powerful on this particular, you know, it doesn't take much.
Yep. So I'm actually playing around with putting them in where these kind of spacers come in.
Yeah.
And using the point of my pencil to kind of get right to the edge there. And then in these triangles, I might add a little bit. So one thing you might notice if you're new to Zentangle or you've been around with Zentangle for a while, in the beginning when you practice Zentangle, a lot of it's all about the tangling, right? It's about the putting ink to paper, and you spend so much time there. And as you develop your practice, we do spend a lot of time in these finishing phases of...
It's like frosting the cake.
Yeah.
This is what you want to do. You want to play with the at the end to bring in these beautiful results, you know.
Yeah. So just, you know, go and revisiting that graphite and gently. I'll use sort of a little circular motion. Blend them. And it does sort of antique it. It kind of ages it. Like I said, you can just use the tortillon maybe to add little bits here and there. All right, so now we're ready to put in some of our words. So I think we mentioned before that the name of this particular species is a singing mirth blossom. Singing mirth blossom. And a little bit about this particular species. And as we've mentioned, you can name your species whatever you want, and you can give it its own descriptions and where it lives. You don't have to necessarily follow along with exactly what we're doing, because this is your collection, your variations, your experiences. So whatever it is that you'd like to do, and you are welcome to share with ours if that feels good too. So for some of the tangles we used in here, we definitely used mirth, which is related to Pangea, but I think I'm just going to put mirth there for now. We used kind of a little bit of I guess it could be fescue or sprinkle. Should we put both in?
I would put fescue / Indirella.
Okay, right. Okay.
Which ends up looking like
sprinkle. Yeah, so I might just put both there. I think that the way that mirth is done in this way does have some senna connection. So I'm going to put senna in here. In my research, I might.
But senna is in the tangle mirth.
Yeah. So, yes. But I think it's good to know, like when you're studying these things, like where they come from. Yeah. And then I feel like these leaves have some muka connection, and
Samson.
And Samson. Yeah. Thank you. I knew there was one more. All right, well, that's actually a lot of influences that pulled us into this. So that was fun to do. Where does this plant actually grow? This one is most commonly, and if you're looking for one, you might find one. This is a place where you go. So you would most commonly say that these are found by a babbling brook in small New England towns. So of course this is where we live, so we are more familiar with these native species. And the reason you would find this plant near a babbling brook is that it is actually very communicative. Yes. Because it's a singing mirth blossom. It does actually thrive when it can talk.
Interact.
Yeah. So it tends to mimic songbirds and
maybe the babbling brook.
And maybe humming people or whatever, and we'll get to that in a minute. But and maybe the babbling brook. Right. So that is a good home for it for sure. It is very interesting that the singing mirth blossom, the dried blossoms can be used decoratively and aromatically.
Ooh.
I'm just going to put a heart here because it is known that the presence of these blossoms like hanging in your home tend to warm hearts and families. So
I have known them to induce laughter.
Oh, really? Yes. Oh, well, that's quite fun. So anyway, you might see people around here hanging them and drying them at different times of year, and it does actually seem to enhance that type of thing. So that is nice. And as we said earlier, I'm just going to put a little note here that the singing mirth blossom does mimic the sounds of native songbirds and humming people. So if you're one of those people out for a stroll and you start to hum, you may notice that the mirth blossoms might just sing back at you. So anyway, there's our tall tale of the singing mirth blossom, and we hope you enjoyed this little adventure here today where you could escape into the imaginative world of tangles inspired by nature and by this beautiful organic world around us. So fun stuff, Mom.
So beautiful.
All right. Thanks again.
Love it. Bye-bye.